Mr. Leisman, you know I'm turning to you. This is now day 2 where the markets have lost trillions of dollars in value, and this is most likely just the beginning.
Can I start off in correcting you, Stephanie? It's not day 2. This is day 2 of the most extreme part of this sell-off. What's really important, I think, to know is the market has sold off continuously since Donald Trump took office. Trillions of dollars have come off of the market cap of the stock market in anticipation of a plan that was going to be a lot less severe than one we found out Thursday. I think it's important to make this distinction, not just to correct you on air gratuitously. I think
that's fun.
Right. OK, so I think the importance here is they already hated what they thought they were going to get, which they thought was not going to be as bad as it was going to be. Then he comes out with this crazy plan based on, we can talk about the formula, and I can tell you how I found out about the formula, but it was a formula that nobody had ever seen before, based upon things that were basically made up as a formula for figuring out. And that's when the market decided, I thought this was going to be bad. Now I'm finding out this is going to be much, much worse than I thought it was going to be. And that's what Powell, the Fed chair, said today. It is now clear, I'm not quoting him exactly, but I'm getting the sense right. It is now clear that the economic effects of the tariffs will be much larger than expected. So just to be clear, the plan that President Trump was thinking of before, which was the one the market had priced in, had already caused the market to sell off trillions. These are an additional trillions because the plan is far, far worse than had been expected.
Chris, this is one of the reasons why we're seeing Wall Street investors panic, even those who are big Donald Trump supporters. One of the reasons they're panicked is because they know Donald Trump isn't a markets guy, but Scott Bessent, who they know is Treasury Secretary, doesn't seem to be in the room, right? When they look and they say it's Howard Lutnick and Peter Navarro, who has their hands on the wheel, because it doesn't seem like there is anyone responsible who understands markets or economics.
Who is influencing Donald Trump? Who can talk to him and say, this isn't working? The Wall Street Journal is saying it's bizarre and slapdash the way you put this together. The Wall Street Journal is saying it's an astonishing display of economic ignorance. And yet what we hear reported is that the person who got 30 minutes in the Oval Office was Laura Loomer. And I won't even...
we'll leave her aside.
The point is who has his ear on this? And the answer from everyone that I have talked to over the last several weeks is no one. This is a deeply held belief, as you know, that he has had for a very long time. And he seems to truly believe that's what's happening is good. And you've heard it from him. As Americans were telling us that they are terrified, as people are stopping me on the street and saying, what is happening here? As people, let me tell you about a woman who in 2000 and, let me find my notes, 2008, she started a business to empower women. They sell planners, they sell other home goods. She was doing well. She has 9 woman employees. Then in 2017, the first round of Donald Trump's tariffs, as she put it, it was scary. She's paid up $1.2 million in tariffs since then. Now she says it's absolutely devastating, and I want to read to you what she said to me. As an entrepreneur, as a creative, it devastates me and it feels catastrophic to have to look at the future of my American dream, of the American dreams of so many people, and feel like this is where it ends.
And this is on the lap of Donald Trump. So in the last 24 hours, obviously last 48 hours, so many calls are going into the White House, from big CEOs to small CEOs to basically anyone who has Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Peter Navarro, or Donald Trump's phone numbers saying, please stop. And of course, when the pressure cooker is on, the knives are out, right? This morning, I was talking about it on TV. I heard from sources close to this White House that maybe Bessent was going to be out. Maybe he was headed to the Fed. And then I quickly heard from the White House today from people close to Scott Bessent saying, no, he's more committed than ever. Deregulation, tax cuts, that's what it's all about. But at the end of the day, when there's bad news and they blame one another, in this case, There's no one who can take the fall except Donald John Trump, because this is his baby.
I mean, I seem to remember, 6 months ago when everyone thought, when the market rallied when he got elected, because everyone thought, oh, he's going to get rid of all the regulation. He's just kidding about the tariffs. He's not serious. This is just one of his little fixations. He's just going to give us corporate tax cuts. And that's all that they heard. That's all that they wanted to, hear from his campaign. And now you have IPOs stopping. StubHub and Klarna just pause their IPOs. So I don't know where this animal spirits, as they were calling it, went. And I think what this really belies is that when they can't even decide who is in charge of this, there is something deeply irresponsible going on. The way that they're calculating these tariff rates, they're not even counting services. We don't even have a manufacturing economy. So it's like, how are they making up new ways to calculate tariff rates? It just doesn't make any sense. It is so deeply irresponsible, and trillions of dollars. This isn't just it's money on paper, but this is Americans' retirements. This is business value. This is stock, this is shareholders, even them.
Can I just say, to your point, the woman I spoke to today, she has nowhere in the United States to source her products.
That's this whole ball game that keeps being left out. When Howard Lutnick goes on TV and says the robots are going to do it, why isn't there a CEO next to him saying, yep, this is my company, we're doing it? Think about, right? Adidas spent 15 years saying we're going to start manufacturing here. We don't have. If we all decided to take a walk later tonight to the Garment District in New York, you know where we'd be walking? Nowhere. One block, half a block. It doesn't exist.
But even if you could, let's say, make a factory overnight.
In 5 years.
But where do the inputs come from for the factory? So you have the cost of labor, which is going to be significantly more expensive in the United States. And then where do you get the inputs? Where do you get raw materials from? They're not just going to spring up out of the soil.
Dr. Cohen.
Let me point out, if I may, that we still do some manufacturing in the United States. In Storm Lake, Iowa, my hometown, we have about 3,000 immigrants cutting meat in Storm Lake. People eat pork and turkey, and they want to ship all these people out, or they say they do. It's funny that they're arresting people in New York, but they're not arresting people in meatpacking towns like Storm Lake, Iowa.
Why do you think that is?
Because Tyson and Smithfield, which is owned by the Chinese, and JBS, which is owned by the Brazilians, are very powerful and very moneyed. It's very evident. And
that's extraordinary. When these tariffs do hit, though, even if, obviously we're talking markets, but there might not be Wall Street investors, in the heartland of America, but people have 401ks, they have retirement accounts, and prices are going to go up. Do people know that?
Well, right now prices are going down. Soybeans went down 22 cents overnight. That was a 3% drop. They're down 22% since Trump was elected. China has found other customers in Brazil and Argentina. And so in Iowa, people say, okay, short-term gain, short-term pain, long-term gain, except all we ever get is the pain. We never get the gain. Corn is at the same price now in real terms as it was during the Civil War.
And you can grow corn in Iowa. What you can't grow is coffee. It is more than water. More Americans drink coffee every day than drink water every day. You can get it. You can grow it in Hawaii. You can get Kona coffee there. You cannot get it here. We have people who are going to their local coffee shop to support their local business people and buying 3 and 4 and 5 pounds of coffee. Yes, because they want to support them, but also they're very afraid that the price is going to go through the roof. We cannot produce that.
One other point I'd like to make is that farmers got up over $70 billion during the China trade war in the first Trump term. People keep saying it's $23 billion. Yeah. That's just from 1 year. That's inaccurate. It's actually $70 to $100 billion, which is going to these same big ag conglomerates as well. And so farmers back in the first trade war with China in the first Trump administration were saying, joking about their Trump bump. And so as long as they were on welfare, it's all okay. They were buying them off. And they were saying, oh, we'd rather make money from the market, but, if you want to give us $100 billion, that'll do.
Okay, so the farmers can get bought off with a potential other farm aid package, But what about all the businesses? What about the business Chris is talking about? Businesses big and small that make consumer products that we simply can't start producing here. What's going to be the next leg in this trade?
A recession. I mean, that's really, if you ask me the ins and outs and all the 30,000-foot view of what's happening in the market is pricing in some probability of a recession here. In fact, while the JP Morgan probability of recession is 60%, the U.S. economist, who I know quite well, Mike Ferroli, you probably know him, it's his base case now that there's a recession. He's now saying there will be negative quarters in Q3 and third and fourth quarter. Sees a rise in the unemployment rate by a percentage and change. You cannot do what the Tax Foundation believes will happen, which is to end 1/3 of all imports to the United States. We import about $3 trillion worth of stuff. The Tax Foundation believes $900 billion goes away, and not have something dramatic and unfortunately terrible happen to the U.S. economy. I don't think it's right to completely write off manufacturing in the United States.
I'm not completely writing it off at all.
Yeah.
Listen, we have a ton of manufacturing here, but I'm talking about in specific sectors.
More importantly,
we can't just turn it on tomorrow.
Not only that, there are manufacturers who use cheaper products and inputs from abroad, and that's how they're able to stay in business here. So there's a whole cascade. You remember we used the word opacity in the great financial crisis?
Definitely not.
You know, basically, we didn't know where the losses were. We didn't know who was going to lose what, where, so we sold everything. What's happening now is this attempt at clarity at where the losses will be. So I can make you a list, and it's quite long, but I'll make it as short as I can. A company is directly affected by the tariffs. Their costs go up. A company sells to that company. That company may go out of business because of the company. There's going to be companies that are affected by retaliatory tariffs. The farmers are going to lose it. That's, just to be clear, that's why the price of soybeans are going down. It's because there's no export market for those soybeans, and as well as corn. So there's a cascading thing. Wall Street does not know where the losses are. So what happens when you have this opacity, it's sell now, ask questions later. There are people wondering, that maybe Monday you get a bump or something like that in this search for this, say, well, okay, things are cheap enough now that I'll take a risk to see, it doesn't cost me that much to be wrong. It costs you less. But right
Stephen,
now,
here's what's scary.
You call me Stephen?
I did.
My mother and my best friend are the only people who ever called me Stephen.
Sounds like you've got a new best friend. It's me. When Trump said in that social media post tonight, this is the time to get rich, rich, richer. You know what it made me think about? The great financial crisis. Because people did get really rich. It's actually how Steve Mnuchin became super rich.
Yeah.
When tens of thousands of people lost their homes because of the subprime crisis, businesses came in, well-financed businesses came in and bought them up for cents on the dollar.
That's one way they did it. They also made a lot of money betting that things would decline.
Bingo.
Right.
That is how one of Donald Trump's other biggest backers, John Paulson, became super rich. I was his sales coverage at the time at Deutsche Bank.